Yeah, so I want to thank Damien for joining us and also providing us with some really interesting insight in this area. So this is one of the lenses that we can use for our group assessment, the podcast assessment, where we're reviewing our speculative fiction. And the activities in Miro that we'll be doing in the tutorial and that Damien will be talking about will also be helping us develop some of those ideas for the speculative fiction as well. So thank you very much, Damien, for preparing a talk for us, and we look forward to hearing.
Thank you. You can hear me okay? I'm just going to swap screens. So yeah, hi, I'm Damien Lutz. I'm a UX designer and researcher based here in Sydney. I've been in design since about 2008, and in my spare time I research what can be done with design beyond just selling things and making profit. So today I'm going to talk to you about life-centered design, which is an emerging design framework. I'm just going to start with a little bit about myself, just to put this research in context. Talk to you about what is life-centered design, share with you a potential framework, some key design practices that come together in life-centered design. We'll do a bit of a reality check about this framework in the sense that it's not a silver bullet. And I'll show you some actual products, some actual output from this design framework. And then we'll talk about how we can put some life-centered thinking into your speculative design project. So yes, just about me, I'm a UX designer researcher by day. I work for the government at the moment in the export process. Previously, I've worked in more digital products for like the Vodafone app, Hotels Combined app, that sort of thing. So today I'm not speaking on behalf of any of these organizations, but just on behalf of myself. I've done some UX teaching for Harness projects. And through my research that I do in my own time, I've produced a few design guides for speculative design and life-centered design. And I share some of that as well on Medium and some tools there as well. Just want to be really clear about the framework that I share today. It's totally speculative. So life-centered design is so new. There's not really one developed, cohesive, agreed upon framework. I've looked at all these different approaches, pulled them together as a bit of a future vision of what it might be. So it's speculative and as a means to help communicate the scope of it to anyone who's new to it, which is most people. And it's more of a learning tool to encourage other people to contribute to its evolution. So what is life-centered design? Well, we're not super clear on it yet. There's lots of different names for it. You might hear 21st century design, circular design, environmental design. I have sort of landed on life-centered design because it was the most common one that used. So I don't like to introduce new words or new terms as much as possible. And as far as definition goes, there's lots of people working on it. So we all have different definitions. Mine is that it's an emerging design thinking that expands our human-centered design to consider all peoples, animals, and planet to support a thriving existence for all. And there's some other definitions there as well. But basically, life-centered design is addressing what I see as three problems of modern design. One is that human-centered design is really about designing with only humans in mind. Hello, come on in. It's also, we've only really been designing for only part of the human spectrum. Accessibility, inclusivity is not even like a default learning module a lot of the time. So it's designing for just this part of the spectrum. And mainly we're designing for profit and constant growth. And these have contributed to a lot of the climate, environmental, and social problems that we have today. It's also, life-centered design is also addressing the linear product life cycle that we've been using for decades, which is where we extract materials, we make things to sell, we focus on the experience for the user, and then the user discards them and it creates this waste and pollution. And this has been very destructive because it's not just the waste of the product that's thrown away at the end, it's the waste of energy and resources all along this supply chain as well. So life-centered design is aiming to turn this whole design process into something that's more circular and regenerative. It's about minimizing what we take out of the earth and reusing the materials that we've already got and used. It's about at the end of their first use, they get repaired and reused. The product might be designed so it's modular, so it can be broken down and everything reused or rebuilt into other products. And the whole process is actually not just about making profit for one business or one group of people. It's also sharing that profit to enrich the communities that are part of that supply chain. So life-centered design is also about aligning the three levels, the micro level where we have product designers, the meso level, which is business and society, and the macro level, which is on the global level. And at the global level, we have the sustainability goals, which the UN have developed, I think since about 2015, with about 193 countries. These are 17 goals to make the world a sustainable and fairer place. The goal is to achieve these by about 2030. So they're things like no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, better health, life on land, strong institutions, constant development and decent work and economic growth. It's interesting because the goal for 2030 sort of coincides with these planetary boundaries, which have been identified by the Stockholm Resilience Center. These are boundaries, these are like 9 aspects that we can measure of the Earth that tell us its health, how it's tracking. And the Stockholm Resilience Center says that we have until about 2028, 2030 to make any changes to mitigate the impacts of these boundaries being crossed. As you can see, what's in green is how we're operating with these boundaries in a safe way, and where they have gone into orange is where we don't actually know what the impacts are going to be. As you can see, we've crossed quite a few at this stage. So these boundaries are part of what the sustainability development goals want to manage. They're also part of what's called the donut economy. So this is an alternate economy of the linear one we're in today. It's basically that donut shape is metaphorically the safe space of humanity to live and operate. And it's contained by two rings. So the inner ring is the social foundation. And this is what, these are like 12 foundations that we want to aim to keep all people, that's right, coming in. 12 foundations for life, for human life, that we want to keep everyone above. And the outer ring is the ecological ceiling. So it's where we're managing these planetary boundaries and in a safe way. So that space in between is our safe operating space. The interesting thing about this donut economy is that if you look at those 2 rings, those 2 boundaries, the inner and the inner relates to the relationship between people and people, and the outer ring relates to relationship between people and land and the environment. And these are the 2 key relationships that a lot of Indigenous wisdom have been telling us about for tens of thousands of years. So life-centered design is actually threaded with this wisdom, and it's reconnecting us to it. So if at the macro level, we have the sustainability goals, I'm just going to work my way down this to the experienced designer level, which is probably more relatable to you. Business can connect through to sustainability goals by having ESGs, which are environment, social, and government commitments. So these are commitments at these 3 areas for the environment, giving back to the environment, to society, and how they govern their business. It's about the businesses having these actual goals and actions set into their business to give back part of their profits. This is actually mandated in EU at the moment. It's not here, it's voluntary, but it's only a matter of time before businesses will need to have these here as well. So an example of having these ESG commitments that align with sustainability goals, Patagonia. So before, the founder recently has donated all his profits, millions of dollars, to these environmental goals. They had set up these ESGs. So a couple of them is they use organic certified cotton, and they support people and animals along the life cycle, and they have initiatives to improve soil health. And these all relate to the sustainability goal of life on land, and that gives them an environmental commitment. Then they have some for social. They have an anti-racism manifesto in their business, and they have initiatives to support fair work conditions all along the life cycle. So these are like their social goals. So in that way, they have these goals that connect to the sustainability goals at the global level, and that connects the designers, because designers then can support these ESGs in the business, and that connects someone, an individual designing a website or a new shoe in a way that supports the global goals. I just share with you what this, what the framework of life-centered design could look like. So as I said, it's emerging. There's lots of people working on it. I had a look at a whole lot of different people and organizations and methods that are expanding human-centered design to get an idea of what this scope is. There's a lot of variations. So some of these business and organizations are focusing on sustainability. Some are also looking at social justice. So whatever they do in their business, they're supporting the social goals as well as environmental ones. Some are aligning with SDGs, some are not. They're all starting to combine design practices. So not just human-centered design or just UX. They're combining things like circular design, biomimicry, where we copy nature's solutions, and systems thinking. And they're all looking at physical design and digital design in different ways. So some are focusing on designing physical products in a sustainable way. And there's a little bit of movement in the sustainable digital space as well. But they all have a common purpose, and that is to forgo profit-only design for design that also nurtures the relationships between people and land. So another good way to really understand the scope of life-centered design is to compare it to human-centered design and what's the difference, how is it expanding? So it changes our focus from our stakeholders just being the business and the user needs. It's also suddenly our stakeholders are all the people and all the animals and all the environments that are part of the life cycle of the product that we design. Our design values change. So it's not just what's best for humans and best for the business. It's also best for what we call non-users. So these are people that are along the supply chain that build your product but don't actually use it. And again, the animals and environments. The process changed. So human-centered design, you're probably familiar with the double diamond, and you can go back and forth, you can test, reiterate. So life-centered design is the same, but it's also multi-level, as we talked about, zooming out from the macro level of your design and seeing it in a life cycle view and how it impacts countries, whether your factories might be. And as I said, it combines all these different design practices. So it gives this kind of framework. We think about the stakeholders that have expanded, the values, the process is more responsive, and it combines 11 practices. If we think about it, that to ensure all of these independent stakeholders thrive, which is the goal, and aim to uphold, we can do this by aiming to uphold 3 pillars of these new pillars, which is about being inclusive, sustainable, and responsible, using a responsive approach and switching between design practices. So some key design practices that life-centered design brings together. Sustainable digital design. So this is basically thinking in terms, when you design a website, you think in terms of the energy that it uses and the choices that you make, the energy they use. So you might use darker screens because all white screens emit a lot of more light, and that uses up energy. Looking at green hosting. So businesses that host your website that you use renewable energy. Also, human-centered design. I feel like that needs to evolve as well for life-centered design. It needs to have inclusivity, accessibility, and diversity by default, because at the moment it's kind of optional. Pluriversal design, I'll just talk to this a little bit. This is something that merges academic design with traditional wisdom. And pluriversal design is a way of designing for other people with their values. It's about decentering yourself as a designer. It's born out of countries in the global south, countries that don't necessarily adhere to capitalism and constant growth, but they're often the ones that are mostly affected by it. So because they're used for the materials that are there that we use in our technology, and they're used for their cheap labor as well. So this sort of thinking has come out, which is it's also it fights social injustice. So just to give you an example, Maria Rogel is a designer in, I think in South America, and she's been doing this sort of work for maybe 20 years. She went to help these people in I think, Western Mexicans, the Wichitara people, I think that's how you pronounce it. So these people had 2 jobs. They were working for a company, a factory, as one job, but they also had a farm. And the factory followed like the Gregorian calendar. So it recognized things like, time is recognized as a 7-day work week. The time off would be weekends and public holidays. So that's that business's sense of time. But then you have these people working there that work to another sense of time, which is their farm, which follows the cycles of the time cycles of nature, the moon cycles to harvest, and the seasons. So there was this real tension because these farmers couldn't get time off to participate in their other life, which is this farm work. So Maria went in there and worked with them to understand what are their values, what is their sense of time, their different way of living that's not matched with the Euro-Western way, the capitalist way, and help them design their own calendar. It had the Gregorian calendar on the outside, but it had their cycles on the inside. It was the focus. It used their colors, their motifs. So it could be used as a communication tool between these two different worlds that see life differently and want to exist on the planet differently. And it also became a tool to pass on the knowledge through generations. The other thing about pluriversal design is that because it's saying capitalism is not the only way to live, it's challenging the UN sustainability goals because they claim these are a bit development focused. They talk about economic growth, they talk about consumption and production, which if you're a country that doesn't adhere to capitalism, that doesn't work for them. So there's potential way to think about sustainability goals as an ongoing conversation. So I'm fully respect the work that's done with them. It's amazing that we're aligning with them and we have them. But it seems that if you listen to other people in the world, they live differently. It's an ongoing conversation we can have to challenge them or to improve them. Also distributed design. So just one more practice to share with you. This is about, instead of having this one central place where you make all your products and you ship them out across the world using up all the energy and resources, you can connect with maker spaces all over the world. These are like little communities that have their own tools and workspaces. You can send digitally your designs. They can download it and build them there, saving energy of all this shipping and supply chain. Also fosters a pluriverse because it allows us different locations to design it using their resources and the look and feel of it according to their culture. So before we get on to the tools for your exercise, just a bit of kind of a reality check with life-centered design. It's really emerging. It really is a journey. Thank you for coming in. Is this the same thing? Yes. Yeah. Yeah. No worries. Come in. So life-centered design is very, very new, and there's things to be resolved. So there's a couple of arguments about making the way that we live more sustainable and regenerative. So one is green growth, and the other is degrowth. Green growth is about, okay, we'll just keep building everything the way that we do, but we'll use all renewable technologies. And the other argument is that we need to actually slow down how much we build and create. The problem with green growth is that, and there's some really interesting, I highly recommend you watch this by Lydia Lizard at the TED Talk. This is a debate between the two, but this is like a reality check in regards to if we just suddenly use all renewable energies, it will actually drive this a greater extraction of materials from the planet and actually cause more damage than if we don't make a change. So it's really interesting to watch. It's probably not so much an either or, but more a way that we use both solutions. And so there's circular rebound effect. So that's a good example. If we might make a change that we think is more life-centered, that's going to be better for the environment. But if we look at it long-term and use even speculative design to imagine the scenarios of the impacts of these decisions now, we can see that there might be worse effects. It's kind of three overarching strategies that I can see, apart from the spelling mistake. Three overarching strategies if you want to make your design and your business more life-centered and have a more regenerative impact and foster social justice. So one is to restore. So you just keep taking the materials you need, make the products that you create, but then you give back. So an example is if you create a book, you're selling books, then these cause a cut down of trees and for paper, so then you plant new trees. So you're restoring. Another way to improve what you're doing is to reduce. So use less trees, to use recycled materials. A third strategy is to enrich. So let's say you're everything you're doing is using all recycled materials. You're not making any damage to restore, but we should still give back to the environments we take from to enrich them and make them more resilient over time. So it's kind of really important to reduce what we do. Restoring is great, but you've got to have these other strategies involved to make things more resilient. Let's talk about how you could get life-centered thinking into your future vision. And I'd argue that there's going to be some sort of life-centered thinking in any future, whether things get worse or they get better or they stay the same. If things get worse, we'll have to adapt to the climate change impacts. So we'll have to use more life-centered strategies to manage the less materials that we can get. I think your task is writing a story about a future data-driven technology and to create a story about issues that are had with it and then find a resolution. So one thing you can do with your story is that you can include some environmental, climate and social solutions, some positive solutions, have them in the background. You can relate your data subject to a life-centered business. So then the story is about a life-centered business. So again, you've got this in the story. You could make your hero an employee or a customer of the business. Or you can make your hero a non-user or non-human. And in that way, in this way, you're in your vision, you're sharing with people life-centered thinking. One of your responsibilities as someone that does create future visions is to help people expand their idea of what's possible. And the last one, make your hero non-user or non-human. In that way, you're helping promote this concept that it's not just about humans, it's not just about the target user, but you think about who else is impacted by all these designs. So let's talk about this one, relate your data subject to a life-centered business. How can you do that? I'll just give a few examples of real-world products today. So Adidas have this new shoe. So what you're looking at this is just a linear model, right? This is what you take, make, use and throw away and lose. But what they've done is they're making this shoe out of only recycled polyester and upcycled materials as well. So they've reduced the extraction of materials and they're using waste as a resource. And all the materials at the end can be recycled again. They've reduced all waste to zero. And so they're creating this circular model. And overall, they have a transparency of business activities. So they're letting people know what they're doing to hold themselves accountable, but also to allow customer or users to actually purchase more sustainably with their values. Another really cool example is the Fairphone modular phone. I'm pretty tempted to give this a go with my next phone purchase. This is basically a phone that's made more modular so customers can take it apart easily, repair it themselves easily, and upgrade it themselves easily. So I think the key things that they can change is the battery and the camera. So you think of how many iPhones have come out, and all they've really done is improve the camera. So in that way, you don't have to throw away a whole device to just get these key upgrades. And as I said, it allows customers to repair the product themselves, which extends the life of that product. It reduces waste through reuse and repair. They've also got initiatives, the company Fairphone have initiatives to improve working conditions along the supply chain and to ensure that where the materials come from is a safer place. So I don't know if you've heard of conflict materials. These are materials that are taken from countries that don't have strong institutions, and organizations go in there to get these materials mainly for technology, and it just causes a lot of corruption. So they're looking at ways to improve all of that through their business. So in this way, they've got a circular model and something that also helps foster social justice. So it's starting to become more life-centered. And they're also transparent with everything they do as well. Life-centering digital experiences. So I couldn't find an example that would illustrate what I wanted to share. So, and I think the digital space is an area that we really need to think more about in regards to making it more sustainable and socially just, because we always think about the digital experience on the phone, not the way that it drives the need for the physical device, the servers in the background, and the materials that are needed for those. So if we think about a digital experience from the perspective of the online experience, so a customer accesses the experience, they use it, and then they might abandon it, they delete the app, or they just don't use it anymore. And you think about sort of the outside aspects. It drives the need for new devices. and there's waste and pollution that is caused from the energy required to run all this. So a life-centered digital experience could employ things like durable programming, so it survives operating system updates and device updates. It could encourage sustainable user behavior. So give users ways to use less energy, use less data. Also encourage sustainable, so it's designed that encourages ethical behavior. So respecting other people's privacy, not trolling, and also healthy user behavior. So giving users ways to minimize their screen time, which also reduces the energy used, and minimize things like addiction. And perhaps at the other end, ways to get rid of the data instead of having data stored there. I mean, we have so many phones, so many photos that we never look at, sitting somewhere, taking up energy. Maybe there's ways that we can mitigate that as well. Other things to do for digital experiences is just think about energy efficient user journeys. So how do you make the experience for the user very, very simple and reduce the energy used? Green hosting, as I mentioned before, and again, just being transparent with business activities. So if you keeping those in mind, so just on the Miro board, so just on the right, there's a whole lot of resources that you can go through in your own time and a copy of the slide deck. And then down here, I haven't used Miro with a mouse before. There you go. Learning something new every time. Okay, so it's kind of broken into two tasks. So one, I'm going to take you through this. These are just your workspace. We've got examples of what to do. The first task is to look at this. If you think in terms of your project, you're going to look at a data-driven technology. So we're going to look at the technology as part of our life-centered business. We'll look at a tool for getting those ideas for physical products, and then there's a tool for digital products. Then we're looking at what sort of product or business that your data issue is embedded in. And then number two is, I won't go through them today. You can have a look at them in your own time. But these are personas for the non-human and non-user personas. So if you look at a life cycle and you find that the hero or the person impacted by your data issue is someone in a supply chain, not the user, you could use a non-user persona. An example there is a child worker. You might see that the data issue impacts the environment or animals. So you can create personas for them to help make them heroes of your story and help get represented more. There's links just there. You can read more about those in your own time. But what I want to talk about are these tools. So I might just pause there and see if there's any questions or any thoughts. Are you following this in regards to how it might help you with your project? Is it making sense to anyone? Yeah. Yeah, okay, cool. So we talked about these products and how they're kind of changing the linear model. So what this tool will do is basically, has anyone got an idea of their project yet, what the data is, what their data-driven technology is yet? Sorry to put you on the spot in case you haven't come up with anything. Okay, let me take you through this one, clothes business. Imagine a clothing business. So what the first line is just going to get you to think about that business and how it could be more life-centered. And then all of these about what data could you get out of it. So if you haven't really got a clear idea what data you could use, this can help you give you ideas. So let's have a look at a clothing business. How would we make it more life-centered? Think about it in terms of the steps of a life cycle. So starting with recycled materials, then it's shipped, then it's used, it's collected for repair, refurbished, and reselling. So that's kind of a general circular model. So at the first stage, the materials could be recycled garment materials. So that reduces waste and resource. So you're just using recycled materials for these clothes. In the manufacturing stage, you might use distributed design that I talked about before, which is sending the design out to seamstresses or clothing makers in different countries. where they can locally make it for you. To encourage sustainable use, you might actually give free repair kits to the customers, or perhaps there's a QR code on the label that they can scan and get instructions on how to repair. Collection, you might have some system where if someone's finished with their clothes, they can book in a pickup. Again, maybe it's scanning a QR code, and then those clothes are repaired and resold, or the materials are recycled. So if you just have a look at those examples and think about how you can make this business that's in your story more life-centered, and then you can start thinking about things like, well, what data might be shared or recorded along all those steps? How might the data be used? And then you can think about how might be misused, have a look at an extreme example, and then think about how it may resolve. So in this way, you're starting to get ideas for your future story based on a life-centered business and data coming from a life-centered business. So let's have a look at, let's say, and I just kind of threw this together. So let's say you've got this life-centered business that offers free repair kits that people can scan a QR code on the label. So the data that might be recorded is patterns of frequency of repair needs, types of people who repair and types of people who don't. So how might this information be used? Just to see who repairs, target them with more information or encourage them to repair more often. How might it be misused? Maybe it starts to stereotype people of an area that this whole area is really bad with their clothes and just throwing things away all the time. And maybe they get abused on social media or something like that. So that's kind of an example. You can just follow this path of data that you can collect along this whole path, this whole life cycle, and what issues may become of it. Any questions on that one before I go to a digital? Because, and think about that also, like if there is any waste in the cycle, what could you do with it? So perhaps the food is not thrown away, but is picked up and given, to homeless people or something like that. But cool circular thinking. And we'll think about, look at different data collection technologies. So QR codes, chatbots, whatever, just do some research on these different ones. So let me talk about how might this work for a digital experience. So again, we'll look at a digital experience just from the life cycle of the experience. So this is a diet and activity tracking app. So I was just thinking with this one, just to be a bit more life-centered, could suggest purchasing from suppliers of food rescued from being waste, right? So this could fit into your idea. User might scan a barcode on the food. App suggests alternate food sources, so it tells them that they could, and that could encourage sustainable purchasing. But then, as you said, supermarkets might lose substantial businesses and workers might let go. So there's your issue, which is really interesting because it's like, this is using speculative design. It's not a direct consequence, but by kind of futures wheeling this, you're seeing that the indirect consequences from this data use that might seem like it's a really good idea to start with. Another idea is perhaps, okay, so the app knows where food is purchased, but then it might know too much about the users and it might sell the data to advertisers as an example as well. So it might help you generate these sort of issues that you might not see at the beginning. Any thoughts on that one? On a digital experience? Just follow that path, that journey, and follow those steps. What data might be shared or recorded each step? How is it used? How could it be misused? And then take it really, really extreme. And then think about how you might resolve it. And through this, try to think about use life cycle thinking. So how might it impact not just people, but animals and environments along the whole life cycle as well. So then you might be able to go and actually make your hero a non-human. Okay. Well, I might wrap it up there if there's no more questions. Sorry, flicking your vision. So I've got some guides that you can explore and a website. There's tools, there's free tools as well. I share thoughts and tools on Medium, and I have an article there that's all about what other people are doing, and I urge you to have a look at that as well. There's some really cool different frameworks and thinking that's going on around the world.